Good afternoon. Today I'm going to discuss the two pieces of legislation which were discussed with you earlier today. That being the amendments to the Electrical Power Control Act, the Energy Corporation Act, and the Hydro Corporation Act, which will support the financing activities associated with Muskrat Falls and mitigate risks to the provincial governments and ratepayers in Newfoundland and Labrador arising from the finance raising process. It's important that we move forward with these legislative amendments now to ensure the required legislation is in place to advance implementation of Muskrat Falls and by facilitating the financing structure, as Nalcor will approach the markets in early 2013 to begin the next steps in the financing process. Muskrat Falls, as most of you are aware and have heard, will be financed through a combination of equity and debt. This will not cover all costs associated with the project. The remaining costs will be financed as non-recourse debt, whereby the debt will be supported entirely by the project's assets and cash flows. Non-recourse debt is commonly, or non-recourse financing is commonly used in the energy and infrastructure sector and will provide protection for both the provincial government and Nalcor. However, in order to achieve the non-recourse debt structure, it will be necessary to show lenders, and it has been necessary to show lenders and rating agencies, that the rates charged to the ratepayers will be sufficient to cover the costs of the generation and the transmission of Muskrat Falls power, and that the revenue obtained will be from the rates will flow unfettered. The federal loan guarantee also in Schedule A requires this. So the PUB will be directed to apply Muskrat Falls costs, and they will not be able to disallow or allow project costs when setting the rates. As such, the amounts charged then to Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro by the entities responsible will have to be accepted by the PUB. The rates charged by Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro to Newfoundland Power for the block of power designated for Muskrat Falls cannot be subject to adjustment either. So, in the Electrical Power Act, there's essentially two ways government can instruct the PUB. Under Section 5.1, we can direct the PUB, as we did with the Labrador industrial rates last week. We would direct them on the generation rate, and the PUB will still be involved in the transmission rates. Also, under 5.2, there can be exemptions, and there have been previous exemptions in the past, as in the Labrador Hydro Project, or Lower Churchill Project, Star Lake, and Granite Canal. So, the second requirement, and we'll be talking about these in more detail over the upcoming days and maybe weeks. A second requirement to assure that cash flows are stable and predictable, to support debt service and to protect ratepayers, is to ensure that industries and utilities serving ratepayers remain customers of Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro. All we're doing there is basically we're continuing the status quo. The Newfoundland Power has certain assets; they will remain the same. However, there will be no new generation allowed under the Act. The amendments regarding exclusive rights, and again I'll be talking about this in the House, these are used in other provinces, do not preclude new power generation for export, self-generation for commercial and residential customers, self-generation for emergency purposes, generation for export, as well as exemptions that could be approved by the provincial government. As mentioned previously, borrowing for the project will be done by the Nalcor subsidiaries, the newly created subsidiaries, and the current borrowing limit for the Muskrat Falls project is not sufficient. The current legislation caps borrowing for Nalcor at $600 million. We all know that there will be greater monies required than that. So the financial package, however, negotiated by Nalcor will have to be approved by Cabinet, and the $600 million will remain in place for all other borrowing activities. Now I'm going to move to the Muskrat Falls Project Use and Expropriation Act, which will see the creation of a standalone lands-related act to ensure that Nalcor and Emera have the ability to acquire the necessary land interests to advance the proposed Muskrat Falls project. The acquisition of Crown and private land is required for the transmission infrastructure necessary. This will also, however, assist in the finance raising process. So Nalcor will require rights to land owned by the Crown, municipalities, and persons, and will need to acquire a range of different interests in land depending on the project asset to be placed on the land. This could range from total occupancy to permission to occupy. The new legislation will also create a form of statutory easement that will give Nalcor and Emera the right to erect structures on the underlying land, enter onto the land for the purpose of constructing and maintaining the structures, and restrict the uses to which the landowner can use the land. The legislation will establish an expropriation protocol, however, through regulations which the provincial government will adhere to and will allow Nalcor and Emera to pledge the easement as security to financial lenders. The province, Nalcor, and Emera will work together to achieve fair compensation packages for Crown and private landowners. The proposed legislation will provide government with expropriating power for Muskrat Falls. The expropriating power assigned to government will include the power to issue notices of exemption, notices of expropriation, monitor and execute the expropriation process. Government, not Emera, will approve the expropriation of land required by the Maritime Link as per the expropriation protocol. With respect to permitting, the legislation will approve the use of the land by Nalcor and Emera for the purposes of the Muskrat Falls with no requirement for public consultation, other than may be required under the duty to consult, and where necessary, deeming all future and existing development plans to comply with the approved land use. This legislation is an important component of Muskrat Falls and will assist Nalcor, these two pieces of legislation, in advancing the lending process in early 2013 as planned in the current project schedule. The legislation will signal to lenders that government is supportive of the Muskrat Falls project and will take the necessary steps to ensure its success. Planning for future energy needs is essential and has to be undertaken now, and that's why we are bringing in these legislations, these pieces of legislation, especially after the decision to sanction has been made.